Hi, everyone. So I am Alistair. I lead the commerce team in Google Play, and I'm going to talk a bit about commerce in general and subscriptions in particular, something that we're very, very excited about. What is commerce? What is our vision? So it's kind of this sentence is kind of a mouthful. The way we think about this is like Play is this gigantic digital marketplace. So over 1 billion users out there, like millions of developers or millions of apps out there yourselves that want to sell to those people. And a marketplace is about transactions. It's about linking those buyers, linking those sellers, making those transactions happen. That's what our team is about. Our aim is to build energy in that flywheel. More buyers equals more sellers equals more buyers. And so when we wake up in the morning, we're thinking about building energy in that ecosystem. That's what commerce is about in Google Play. We love to have like strategic pillars or tenets, and these Larissa briefly touched on. These are the ways that we think about the commerce platform. So number one is reach. In that previous slide, we had the word ubiquitous and the word global. Our business is built, Android is built on massive reach, well over 1 billion users out there. We aim to make it possible for every one of those users to transact on Google Play. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the things that we do in that space. The second is conversion. Once you've built an app or built an experience that is causing the user to enter a transaction flow, our team makes sure that the user comes out the end of that transaction flow having made a purchase. So conversion is a huge deal. We have a whole team of people, again, when they're brushing their teeth in the morning, they're thinking about how to increase conversion in your apps. We also think about trust. Actually, David, who leads the trust team, is going to be giving a talk on what he calls fair play later on today. This ecosystem is built on repeat transactions. Our users make tens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of transactions in the ecosystem. This is real money. These are real experiences. We're like a retail platform. We have to build and maintain trust for our users, and so we focus hard on that. And then the last tenet is growth. Like, we believe that there are things that Google Play can do to drive energy in this ecosystem. We can put the right offers in front of the right users at the right times. And so we've got a growth team that's also focusing on building energy in that flywheel. So we talked about reach. So we have huge reach. This stuff is hard. So we have transactions enabled in over 130 countries. And we have lots and lots of local forms of payment. So credit cards are great. That's awesome. But the fact of the matter is that there's a huge number of users out there who do not have access to a credit card, and we need to make it possible for those users to transact on our platform. I always talk to the team about some farmer in rural Indonesia who doesn't have access to a credit card, who doesn't even have a bank account. How are we going to make it possible for that person to make a transaction on the platform? So one of the things we've done is direct carrier billing, or DCB. At I/O, we announced that we've crossed over 100 carriers. Just a few months later, we had to, actually a bit over 115 carriers around the world who have direct carrier billing enabled. What this means is that a user who doesn't have that credit card, who doesn't have access to a traditional form of payment, can make transactions in your apps. This stuff is hard, I'll be honest with you. Like, just recently, I was having my brain melted by the requirements for direct carrier billing in Kuwait. But it's worth it, because once we figured that out, and once we launched direct carrier billing in Kuwait, buyer growth suddenly took off, conversion took off, everything took off in Kuwait. So we have a big team that wakes up and thinks about this all the time, when now we have more than 600 million devices around the world which have access to direct carrier billing. So you'll have access to those to sell to those users. Subscriptions. So subscriptions is a huge deal. We think this is the next big business model for in-app billing. So over the last few years, we've seen massive growth in the subscriptions ecosystem. And the fact of the matter is, this is a great way for you to monetize your apps. If you're selling a service or ongoing access to content, it's much better to build it as a recurring service than to sell it one time and support it forever. So we're seeing a lot of adoption of the subscriptions business model. Many developers are getting bored, and as a result, we're seeing like massive growth. We think this can easily continue in the future, this enormous growth. So we focus extremely hard on subscriptions. We're seeing a lot of developers getting on board. Many of you in the room are subscriptions business models, and so we love working with you. As you can tell, we're focusing on this. You'll see more and more developers on the slide in years going forwards across 1 million different business models. So again, you can tell I love strategic pillars. The subscriptions team also has strategic pillars, and we're going to talk about each of these in a little more detail. So the first is integration. We want to make it easy for developers or sellers such as yourselves to integrate with our subscriptions platform. We've made some good progress. We've got a long way to go. We'll talk about that. We also want to make sure that sign-up really works for you. This is our strongest area, largely to do with that reach, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Subscriptions are the gift that keeps on giving, but only if you can retain those subscribers. So retention is a huge, huge deal for us. This stuff is tricky, and we have a big team focused entirely on driving retention. And then lastly, running or managing a subscriptions business is tough. It's a lot of data-based information. You need to really be looking at your cohorts, and we want to make that easy for you as well. So I mentioned briefly integration. If you're a simple developer, or a mobile-first developer, integrating with our subscriptions platform is extremely, extremely easy. It's like any other in-app billing. But we're aware that many of you are like multi-platform. You have a very sophisticated order management system behind what you're doing. And so sometimes integrating with us can be a bit of a pain. And so the integration team is working on making that easier, building features for you to make it easier for you to integrate with our platform and to run your business on our platform. And we'll talk a bit about some of the features that are coming up in this space as well. Sign up. This is the big one. Sign up is a huge, huge deal for us. This is the conversion team is thinking about this, and this is also where the reach team comes into account. So there are two things. The one is, do we have access to a form of payment that the user also has access to? And that's where this direct carrier billing comes into account. We have gift cards in over 30 countries. We have PayPal in many countries. We have local forms of payment in other countries. So does the user have access to a form of payment is a huge deal. Otherwise, they just cannot convert in your experience. And then the second thing is we actually have a lot of buyers. We've got huge numbers of people who have already added a form of payment to the Google Play ecosystem, who are already accustomed to walking through this experience. And those users also convert at much, much higher rates. So we see a lot of success in the space. And a good example of this is our friends at CBS. After integrating with the Google Play subscriptions platform, their sign-up conversion went up enormously. They saw far more users entering on their platform as a result of the reach and as a result of the conversion. There's a whole conversion team in Google Play just making this purchase flow work better and better and better. Now, another example is Coffee Meets Bagel. They started off using the subscriptions business model, and now 20% of their revenue is on subscriptions. So this is another good example of success building a subscriptions-based business and using the Google Play subscriptions platform. Coming soon is a feature that many of you have been asking for. This is a good way to drive down the friction in that sign-up flow. So we already have free trials, but a lot of the time what you actually want is a highly qualified user. So you don't want it to be entirely free, but you do want a very low price for that first few 1N subscription period. So introductory pricing is very, very, very close to launching. It's being tested at the moment, and you'll be able to use this to convert more people into subscribers at a lower price, and then they'll automatically revert to the full price after as many periods as you like. So retention, this is a big, big deal. Ultimately, you're providing the value to the users. You're building the motivation. The user wants to subscribe in order to retain access to your service or to your content. So you're building that motivation. Some of the time, however, something goes wrong. The user's credit card expires, or the payment network is down, and we suffer what's called involuntary churn. This is bad. This is really bad. We do not want this to happen ever, and so we have an entire team focused on involuntary churn. We think about all of churn. We want to partner with you to prevent voluntary churn, but the thing that these guys are thinking about when I see them in the morning is involuntary churn and fighting involuntary churn. There are two main things that you can do in this space. So the one is retries, and so we've got a retries team that's figuring out the right ways to retry the charges. Now, because we have so many different forms of payment in so many different countries, the regulations change, the rules change, and frankly, the interactions with those forms of payment change as well. So this team is figuring out exactly the right time to retry a charge, when to retry it, how often to retry it, to get the highest recovery rate possible through retries. And then the second thing that we do to fight involuntary churn is we actually reach out to the users. Sometimes a retry is just not going to work. That form of payment is broken. And so we need to reach out to the user and tell the user, listen, there's been a problem. We need you to take some action. And so very, very recently, we actually launched push notifications from the Play Store to users to tell them that their subscription is broken and that they should come and take action. And again, we've seen improvements. So I'm very excited about the progress we've made, but frankly, this team keeps on coming up with ideas. They keep on eking out more and more recoveries. And so I think that there's even more upside in the future in this space, so we're going to continue focusing on it. Management, ultimately, we want to make it easy for you to run your subscriptions business. We want to build tools. We have a lot of internal analytics on the subscriptions products and businesses, and we want to start surfacing those. And so you should see that coming very soon in the developer console. We'll be releasing additional subscriptions-focused reporting and management tools. So that was a very brief overview. As I say, I'm going to be around all day. We have the engineering lead and other product managers on the subscriptions team here today. Look out for them. I can introduce you to them. We think about integration, so we've got new APIs coming out all the time. We want to make it much easier to manage your subscription SKUs. And in particular, we know that it's difficult to manage the pricing of these SKUs. So we're working very hard on things like price changes and on dynamic pricing of subscription products. Sign-up is a big deal for us. Obviously, we've got the Reach team who just continually is working on new forms of payment. We've got some very exciting forms of payment in Europe and in India coming up. We've got the DCB team, the direct carrier billing team, always working on this stuff. We've got free trials, we've got local pricing, we've got very low prices in some countries, and coming extremely soon, we've got introductory pricing launching, so I encourage you to test that out. On retention, we've got that retention team. Honestly, these guys are the guys I go and see every morning. We've got to drive up the retention rates for all of you. Then subscriptions become the gift that keeps on giving. We have been testing out promotion codes. So you'll be hearing from your BD managers about working with us on subscription promotions. We want to be able to do that. We have been working with intelligent retries. There's some very interesting work there. We've got grace periods, which have been shown to make a huge difference to retention, mostly because it gives us more time to do those retries. We've seen huge improvements in grace period when grace period is enabled. And as I said, we've just launched push notifications, the very first version. We're going to iterate on this to drive the user to fix more subscriptions. And then finally, we've got teams working on the management tools, in particular those churn metrics. As you can tell, I'm pretty obsessed with churn, so we've got a lot of reporting in that space, and we're going to be releasing that in the developer console coming soon as well. Thank you.